Hey, Buddy Manning here. Noah Dalzell alongside from Denver, and the Celtics complete a 3-1 road trip with an excellent fourth quarter, shooting ahead by 18 points by the end of that fourth quarter after a tie earlier in the frame that left this game in doubt for pretty much the entirety before that. Celtics showed some separation in the second quarter. But that fourth quarter dominance, the bench getting by to open it up, and then Tatum closing it out alongside Kristaps Porzingis, who was fantastic in this one, probably his best game of the season, and thinks that it's going to springboard into a nice run ahead for the Celtics here. Here's what he had to say.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's been in a way like more chaotic how they defend us. Also, a lot more swiping, a lot more like physicality and like different matchups and this, and just trying to throw us off and do all kinds of stuff to try to mix it up against us. So we're pretty experienced team, but we're still we're also adjusting because maybe the refereeing is changing a little bit. So now they're allowing more of this, so we have to also take advantage of that. So we're also just being on the go and adjusting. But yeah, the talent we have that it's just a matter of time of us like clicking again and going on a nice run.
So I think, surprise, surprise, you're a little higher on the road trip than me because that Oklahoma City game.
Why don't we give the road trip a game? Agreed.
B plus.
I was gonna give it a B plus too.
All right, so we're on the same page. I think what happened in Minnesota matters. I think what happened here tonight, avoiding a disastrous loss in games where they've struggled in the past, Nikola Jokic being out, those are all real things. The Rockets won. I think part of that continued trend of better defense here, which was Joe's big takeaway from this road trip. But Oklahoma City still leaves a real sore spot where it matters, and that's what we're still doing through this regular season is what's going to matter. That one matters a lot. I think Minnesota matters. This one's taking care of business tonight. So good and bad, I think it just about evens out.
Yeah, I understand that. I think ultimately, like that game, that's the one that everybody was so excited about. The Thunder obviously had won 14 in a row. Still, that's 15 in a row. So I think everybody would have felt really good about this team had they come out of this trip 4-0. They beat the Thunder. That skid before the road trip would have been like out of people's mind, I think. And because you have that second half now, it doesn't feel that way. It feels like we're still looking at the big picture, which we should be looking. But to me, there's a lot of things to like. The health, I think everybody's health looked like it got better through this trip. The fact that Porzingis is finding a rhythm. I thought Sam Hauser looked like he was finding a little bit of a rhythm tonight. And ultimately, like on that type of road trip, it's very rare to go 4-0. Like that's the reality of it. And last year,
Joe said they wanted that though.
Yeah, and Drew said they wanted that. Everybody said they wanted that. And they should want that, right? The same way the fans want to see it. And
So the problem isn't they lost in Oklahoma City, it's that they got so thrown back on their heels. And not in a way that was like, ooh, they didn't expect that or they didn't show the effort. They brought it, they had full health that night, and they still got run off the floor.
They had a really bad second half, but they played 8 halves in this road trip. So I know we're going to keep talking about that second half for a long time, but they still played 8 halves on this road trip. And if you look at last year's team, there were a lot of moments versus the Nuggets at home versus the Nuggets on the road, Thunder on the road when, Josh Giddey was lighting them up and nobody could stop SGA until the final minutes when Tatum switched on to him. There were a lot of moments last year where we were like, they have a really good record. They're historically great, but they're losing all these big games. We don't feel that way with this team anymore because they've proven themselves. We know they're a championship caliber team, and they've had big wins this season. They beat Milwaukee every time they've played them. They split this year, the 2 games with the Cavs. They beat New York on opening night.
Couple over Minnesota too.
Yeah, the ones on the West Coast trip. Houston's been really good. I know nobody's super impressed with Houston, but they've been the 3rd best team in the West or 2nd best most of the season. And so we can't just pick. And I know everybody loves the Thunder right now. And I think they're the biggest threat to the Celtics winning right now, but they've beat a lot of good teams this year, and I'm very excited for the Thunder to come back to Boston because I know everybody's going to be looking forward to that game, and I think the Celtics also are going to be looking forward to it because the same way that we're kind of fixating on the second half of that game, I think they are too. I don't think they feel like move forward from it. That's why they said, when Jokic was out, it didn't feel like that regular, like, okay, the star's out, let's relax. Because they're still pretty pissed off about what happened in that game.
And that's a good sign. The Porzingis stuff is huge. I feel like they need him more this year. This is the most physical. He played in the post. And that's where I want to see him start to get back to himself, is dominating those mismatches. And that extends back to the Oklahoma game, too, where he was probably their most consistent player in that game. Their best stretch in that second quarter came playing through him. And defensively, they're still reaping the benefits of him being back in the post, Holiday's presence, which he's starting to stack some games back here. So I won't understate the health factor. I think that's been the biggest contributor to some of their inconsistency this year. I still want to see them be able to get by if guys are going to be in and out of the lineup, because I think that's just going to be a reality for them this year in many ways. But they're just about there. No Derek White tonight. That's a real loss in a game like this. I'm sure that contributed to some of the bad stuff we saw in the first half here. But in a mixed bag, with guys in and out of the lineup throughout the length of this trip, I think you see that the DNA is still here. It's just, are they going to be able to overcome some maybe slightly worse performances from individual players this year, guys moving in and out of the lineup, and bigger threats obviously being there around the league, and you saw that with the Thunder.
And one other thing, I think Tatum's having underratedly the best season of his career.
We talked that earlier. They need more from him. Feed him.
But it's like, he did some things tonight that, the isolation post-ups, he's finding his spots, he's not forcing things.
Do you think I inspired this performance?
You know what, Bobby? I'm not going to give you credit for that. But, maybe people on Twitter will, so that's half the battle.
It was an interesting game in that sense.
It was.
Jayson struggled early, Tatum took over. Browns found some footing in the second half, and then Tatum
Jaylen was
closed it
quiet
out.
early. He didn't attempt a shot in his first 8 minutes, and he was kind of deferring to others and things. I don't know if that was a result of maybe looking at the film of OKC's second half, or opening Twitter, or hearing your questions pregame. It could be any of those things. But I think ultimately, we talk a lot about this team. Are they the same as last year? Individual guys haven't been as good as they were last year. Drew Holiday, Al Horford, maybe Jaylen, but Jayson Tatum is having the best season of his career so far. I'm pretty certain of that. Just what he's been able to do across the board.
Isolation
big performances,
numbers,
timely baskets when you need them. Maybe his three-point numbers aren't, they could be a little bit higher, but outside of that, he's really having a perfect season. So on that note, that's what you're going to need from him if this team is going to repeat. You're going to need him to play at the level that can compete with other teams' best players, and I do think that he's been doing that this year.
Joe talked about his performance after the game as well. I like that he went to the defense here as well.
Yeah, I mean, he still passed. I think he had 10 or 12 potential assists. But again, it's that balance. We want him to be great every night. We're never going to ask him or any one of our guys to be less of themselves. It's just having an understanding of giving what the game needs in that particular time, and put us in position to win whatever that may be. And so he did a great job of that tonight. Throughout the game, defensively as well. I think. He gave up 2 threes to Porter to start the game, and after that he was very, very intentional defensively, and just as much as on the offensive end.
So I think that's pretty emblematic of their trip. A couple lapses in spots, got right when they needed to, but still the highest standard you're holding them to, that Oklahoma City game. Going to be something that we talk about off this one for a long time. Celtics bounce back tonight, beat the Nuggets after blowing a 15-point lead in that second quarter. They get right in a big way in the fourth and run away with this one over the last 10 minutes. For Noah Dalzell, I'm Bobby Manning. We're back in Boston with coverage of Celtics Kings on Friday, which should be a good one. I've liked what they've done since that Mike Brown
Kings
firing.
team.
Yeah, and they should be pretty healthy by that point too, I'd imagine. Whole week off here. So again, check out all our coverage, post-game reactions, CLNS Media, Celtics All Access. Show some love to Prize Picks. Big reason we're able to travel, do all this stuff. Great sponsors like Prize Picks, as well as Game Time. Get in the Garden on Friday for some great prices over there. We talked about that on the show tonight. Celtics Kings up next in Boston on Friday. We'll talk to you then.